Today is Chulin Chaf Vav, the last parak, the last daf of the first parak. But we're going to start Chaf Hayam and Beis by the Mishnah. Hatemed ad hichmitz. Yeah. So what temed is it's either it's a machlekes Rashi and Tosfos if we're talking about like a raisin kind of a wine. So that, in other words, they would make some kind of a they would make a some kind of a fermented drink out of Rashi. Rashi seems to learn that it's from the chartzanim, from the rind, the raisins that get left over after they press the wine. But Tosfos seems to learn that we're talking about the shmarim, we're talking about the sediment. It seems like there's some sort of machlekes. I'm not sure exactly what the machlekes is in Talian. Anyway, hatamed actually hichmitz, before the fermentation process, before it started to ferment. Rashi's mashma that we're talking about, that there was some sort of, you could see the bubbling up. Actually hichmitz ein nikif kesav ma'isa upaislas hamikvah. So since it has a din of water before it starts to ferment, so it's water that you poured into this shmarim, or into these kartzanim, into this thing. So it still has a din like water. So first of all, the halacha is that when you have money that has kedushas ma'aser sheni, you only allow, when you bring it into Yerushalayim, you're only allowed to buy with it wine and other food stuff, but you're not allowed to buy water. And therefore, since before it starts the fermentation process, it doesn't have a din like water. It has a din like water. So therefore, you can't buy this temed with your ma'aser sheni. And also, it has a din like mayim. And the halacha with mayim is that mayim is poislas hamikvah if before you got to the 40 saw mark, if you put in some water, it passes the mikvah. If you put in juice, it's no problem. You put in juice before the 40 saw, it doesn't ruin your counting up to the 40 saw. So since before the fermentation process, this water that you added to the chatzanim has a din like mayim, and therefore any nikah b'chatz ma'aser u'paisel mikvah. And then the reverse is misha hechmitz. Now it becomes wine, and once it becomes wine, or Rashi calls it pera, whatever, it becomes some kind of it loses its shem mayim, and now mishechmitz nikah b'es ma'aser ve'ena paisel mikvah. Now already it could be bought with. You could use kesef ma'aser sheni. You could use the ma'aser sheni, and the kedusha from the ma'aser sheni money is going to go onto the temed, and you could now the money is good to go. You could use it for anything. You could take it. And in the place of a mikveh, if it fell into the mikveh even before the 40 saw, it's not, the mikveh is not nifsal. And then the Mishnah says another contrast, ha'achim ha'shutvim kishachayavim b'kalbim peturim mi'ma'isa behema, kishachayavim mi'ma'isa behema peturim min ha'kalbim. We discussed this already that brothers could be shutfim in two different ways. They could be shutfim. The pshat is that they after they already split up the estate, they went back and decided to remain as partners. That's one thing. That's ha'achim ha'shutvim kishachayavim b'kalbin. The regular partners. It's not the estate that's paying for their machzah shekel. So therefore, they're regular two partners, and they're mechuyev and a kalbin each. Kalbin is the exchange rate fee, like the service fee that everybody has to pay. And therefore, since the chayav mekabim, because they're regular partners, they're not considered the estate. So therefore, paturim ma'aser behema, regular partners. The halacha is shutzim or patur ma'aser behema. Kisha chayav ma'aser behema. But if when the chayav ma'aser behema, the pshat is because why? Because they're not called shutvim. It still belongs. It's still the tfusa abayis. This is the Rashi. The Rashi says that the lumdus of tfusa abayis is that it's not a separate entity. It's not like an LLC. It's not like a corporation. Rashi seems to say that the word is that the entity is still the father. In other words, the father's even bekever, he still has some sort of he still has sway. He's still in control of this account somehow, and therefore it's considered that he's the one it's his account that has the ma'aser behemoth. It's not shutfis, and also paturim min hakalban, because that's the halacha when anybody pays for the ma'aser the machzor shekel for somebody else, you're not mechuyev in the fee. They didn't charge the fee, so since but if they did not yet split yet, so they're considered, it's considered one estate, and therefore if it's considered from one estate, they're not. It's all the father's estate, and he is not mechuyev in a kalban. Weiter. So the Mishnah. I don't know why the next whole sugi is going to be discussing completely talking about Temed. We're not going to discuss Acham HaShutvim. So why the Gemara was put after the Acham HaShutvim is a little bit shver. Why does it do that? Right? It's really interesting. Now, so I wrote on the side of my Gemara because Rashi explains that these Gemaras are a little bit different. All the Mishnayos are contrasts. All the Mishnayos are contrasts, are extremes, right? But these two start a slightly different signal. Until now, we were comparing two different things. Let's say Shkedim Amorim to Shkedim to the sweet ones, right? We were discussing two separate things. Over here, we're not talking about two separate things. We're talking about the same thing. We're talking about Temed, Achale Hechmetz and Lachash Hechmetz, or Achim HaShutvim, Kishachayav Mekalben and Kishayin Chayav Mekalben. So therefore, since it's slightly different, since it's a different signal, so that's why these two are grouped together. But the problem is the next Mishnah is also in this signaling. So that wouldn't explain why we group these two together. I don't know. Okay. Weiter. So the kash is like this: that our Mishnah seems to say that it's totally in hichmetz lehichmetz, that it has a din like completely mayim before the fermentation process, and after the fermentation process it's completely considered a yayin. That's what our Mishnah seems to assume. Because we understand it's going to be a machlokes taka about this Mishnah. The following brisa machlokes, a brisa machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan. The Tanya hamid tamed v'nasa mayim b'mida. Here's somebody who's a metamid, and so now it's not enough that this case is talking about that he knows exactly how much water he put in. Nasa mayim b'mida. He measured exactly how much water he's going to put in. We'll see v'nimtza kadei midasai, and then after that, when he poured out the water of this temed, he got exactly the same amount of temed. Why is that important? Because that's for sure. Rashi explains that if he's going to end up if he yielded more than he put in, then there's obviously wine that came out from the shmarim that he had stocked. More, right? There's obviously the shmarim contributed to something that he's right because he's got more than he put in. So then it's not a machlekes. We're talking about in a case where he put in a certain share and he yielded exactly the same amount. So nothing came from the shmarim. The only thing is what came is the flavor. That's all he got, right? What?
So the grape seeds.
So machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda mechayev. Rabbi Yehuda is mechayev. I'm sorry. So what's the I'll say pater. So the Tanakama holds you pater because the Tanakama says that seemingly the Gemara is assuming that the Tanakama holds that it's the water has just got a flavor, and just because it got a flavor, it doesn't get a din of a chiyuv of ma'aser. Rabbi Yehuda mechayev, and Rabbi Yehuda says no, that the flavor is mechayev ma'aser on this temet. That's the machlokes, and the Gemara is assuming it's sayich and sayich. So the Gemara mani. So who's our Mishnah? Our Mishnah is mechal k'mtin hichmitz leichmitz, and the brayso was not mechal k'mtin hichmitz leichmitz. Mani irabanon. If our Mishnah is going like that, banon out, it's mashma from the brayso afagav the hichmitz, that even if he was machmitz, it still doesn't have a din of. It still has a din of ma'it. Rabbi Yehuda afagav the leichmitz. Rabbi Yehuda is mashma that in every case ma'ahamid v'nasamay b'mida, it's always mechayev afagav the leichmitz. Amar Nachman, Amar Rabba Avua. Nachman Amar Rabba Avua is going to say. that the machlokes in the brisa, even though the brisa forgot to tell us, but the brisa is talking about b'sheichmetz, and since the brisa is talking about b'sheichmetz, and our mission is going to Rabbi Yehuda, it's machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, and even though the brisa forgot to tell us, it's talking about b'sheichmetz, and that's where our mission is machalik between hechmetz lehechmetz is going loit is going loit Rabbi Yehuda. V'chein Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chelina b'sheichmetz machlokes. Good. So before we go on, it's very, very, very important. There's a massive Tosfos over here. I mean, it's a small. It looks very small, but you just have to medafos read. There's a very, very big problem in this sugi over here. The question is, what's the pshat in the Rabbanan? It's the middle of the Tosfos of Hamatamid v'Nasamayim b'Mida. Yeah, the Tosfos asks the kasha. I'm talking about the second to last thin line. Every this is the big problem. What's going on over here? Hamatamid, what's the word? L'chura, this is out the yisoid. Regular nice and tam. How are you talking that we're not going to have the halacha of nice and tam? Yeah, that is the problem. There is a million terutzim on this. There's a million terutzim, but this is mamish. This is a big Tosfos, a big source in the sugi of Taruvis. We'll just run through a few Yisayis the Geturutzim. Tosfos goes with the teretz. If you see Kihua ba'alma, and there's slightly different svaros of how to say this, but basically what Tosfos is saying is that the derech of wine is that it is appreciated. Wine is appreciated when it's at full strength, or even if it's diluted 2-3 times. That's fine. It's still appreciated the flavor. Masha enkein, if it's diluted more than that, fakert. It has too much of a bitterness without the flavor, and it's not appreciated. And then what? And so some people explain Tosfos that it means that it lives a nice and tam lefgam. It could be there's another way of learning, but pashtus is a nice and tam lefgam. That's the lumdus of Tosfos. Like that's the lumdus of lives a nice and tam lefgam, even though it gave flavor, but the flavor is a lefgam, and therefore it's not counted. Right? That is one of the big yisodos over here. And the marshal, this is negeya. This is negeya. This is actually, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Reb Shlomo Miller paskined about he's makel on the issue about sherry casks in the fancy. What do they call the fancy scotches? Fancy scotches are put into sherry casks. Is a problem of yayin nesach. It's not negate to go through the whole mitzias, but he holds, yayin's kiyuv ba'alma. Anything less than a sixth or whatever it is, kiyuv ba'alma, and therefore he's mako because of this svar. Yeah, that's what exactly the svaras are, and what exactly the case is. Maybe we'll go through at a different time. But that's one mahalach. That's one mahalach of this sugya. This Tosfos himself alludes to another mahalach, but Tosfos holds it's not mashma, but there are other Rishonim that learn like that we're talking about over here D'Rabbanan. And by D'Rabbanan, if you remember, we said before that the lo yichmiru by a taruvis of the mai. So therefore, since we're talking about a taruvis, so our Mishnah is talking about the mai, and by the mai lo yichmiru, so it won't be a problem of a taruvis. It won't be a problem of a taruvis of a nois and tam lefgam. That's a taruvis, no problem. If it becomes temet mishehechmitz, it became wine. If it became wine, then it's not a taruvis. But as taruvis, that would be another mahalach in this sugya. And there's a third. I'll just say over one last, but there's a lot of malachim over here in the sugya. Baron Kotler wanted to say that the pshat is that we know we have a cloud by Paris, that Paris by Paris any fruit juice that's not wine or oil is considered is considered what's lashon. It's just like a zei ba'alma or something. It doesn't have a chashivas of mashke, and therefore he wants to say that will be the svar over here as well. Okay, but that's there's a lot of different svaras what the pshat in this sugi is. Okay, zok the Gemara weiter. Zok the Gemara, and now the Gemara is going to go off on a tangent. Mamish off on a tangent. And the Shittim Gubatz is Takamuchazach over here. What's the pshat in the sugya? Why are we going off on this tangent? I don't know why. Well, it would seem it's Amrad Nachman Amrad Baravur. So we took off. We just said one teretz to the steer of the Mishnah and the Brisa, and we're going to Be'ez Hashem pick it up all the way at the end of the sugya. But we're going off on a tangent because we had two members of Reb Nachman Amrad Baravur. Before the first one that brought this on the bottom of Amud Beis was Amrad Nachman Amrad Baravur. So now we're also Amrad Nachman Amrad Baravur. Yeah. I guess the Shittim Gubatz thought that was not a good enough of a reason. A new sugya. Temed shalakach b'kesef ma'aser. Somebody buys temed b'kesef ma'aser, right? So we said in our Mishnah that if it has a din like mine, you can't take this money and buy this temed because it's water, and you're not allowed to buy water with kesef ma'aser. So what happens? What happens is that the money that had kedushas ma'aser sheni still retains its kedusha, and you can't use it for anything, right? That's the halacha normally. Let's say he bought it. It was still it was before it was hichmetz, and then eventually it was soif hichmetz. Kana ma'isa, the ma'isa, the ma'isa ends up being chal on this temed, and now he could go take the money and go move on. He could take the money and move on. Before it was hechmetz, he doesn't know what's going to end up happening. But if ultimately lamaisa it does ferment. So if ultimately it does ferment, so that is what. So what's the word? My timer igloi milsa lamafreya de peru. So Rashi explains the way it works is that the flavor from the shmarim that goes into the water immediately. That goes in right away. It just takes some time to ferment. And we don't know if it's fermented. We don't know if it's going to happen. So if it ferments eventually, then we know that it was peri all the way along. It was peri before it was hechmetz. Hechmetz is only an indication that it had enough peri, and therefore it was good. But once it happens eventually, Zakra Nachman, so then retroactively, I know for sure that it was peri all along, and the chil worked, and therefore I could go kana maisa and I could move on with the money. In fact, the Gemara elamas nisa in the katani hichmetz. So the Rishonim are muchazach with this. We're going to go with Rashi. We're going to go with Rashi. What the Gemara's kasha is? Who says our Mishnah is talking about in a case where it was lo hichmetz? So Rashi explains that the pshat is in our Mishnah. The lashon of our Mishnah is it's mashma that it says Nikach and Poisel is mashma that it happened already. We're talking about a b'diavad and the stuff was gone, right? Atamed actually hichmetz in a nikach because of Poisel samikv. It's mashma already happened. Not that we have it lefanenu and it's a question of if I could do it before. So right? So Elamas in the Ketani Hichmitz, it's mashma that only Hichmitz in loy Hichmitz loy. But if it was loy Hichmitz, nothing happens before Hichmitz, and I can't work with this stuff before the actual fermentation process. So Gemara, Dilma Ishafke have a machmitz. Yeah, maybe had he left it, it would have been machmitz. So why is our Mishnah mashma that b'diavad is not good? And Rashi explains that, and even if it's not lefonenu, even if it's missing, it's gone. If it's gone, let's go basaroif, because Rashi establishes that even that hichmitz and loy hichmitz, there's obviously roif times. Obviously, it's going to work. Yeah, people do this for a reason. The tamed is it's a legitimate process, right? People do it for a reason, and obviously most of the time it works. It's just possible that it won't work out. In fact, the Gemara Dilma Yishavke have a machmitz. Maybe it would have been machmitz. So let's go basa roif. A rabba kishashiyam imenu b'kois v'lo hichmitz. Enechanami. Our Mishnah is talking about in a case where when it says lo hichmitz, it's talking about that the guy originally, before he sold it, he left over 1 cup for himself, and that stuff because was what was not machmitz, and therefore we know that the rest of the stuff taka would not have been machmitz, and therefore, since the rest of the stuff wouldn't have been machmitz, it's not going to work. But any chanami, if we don't know, we could go by Sarai that it was machmitz. That's the first teretz of the Gemara. That's Rabba's teretz. Rava Hamani Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. This is Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. What's Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri? A famous Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri that you go bus a color and you don't go bus a flavor, and therefore, and since you go bus a color and not bus a flavor, so until the hechmitz, it's not going to change its color, and once it's hechmitz, then already it's toisis. There's some sort of a clear indication it doesn't look like water anymore. Now this Mishnah, we're going to go through this Mishnah. I just want to there's a machloikis in the Gemara. It's a famous Gemara that everybody learns in Makis Daf Dalet, and over there's two. It's a machlokes amaroyim how to learn this Mishnah, right? And there's a tumult in the Rishonim exactly how to be goyrus in this sugi, exactly this Mishnah. So let's go through this Mishnah. Let's go through it. I just try to be Masada it very clearly that it should be Masada. Yeah, what exactly the machlokes is? Ditnan gimel logim mayim choser kortiv shenafal l'seichon kortiv mayim. So let's just the question. The machlokes amaroyim, and the question about how it goes over here in this Gemara is about this line. Gimel lugim mayim. It doesn't say chosa kortiv or not. In other words, like this. The halacha is that 3 lugim of mayim. That's the shear to pass the mikvah. Yeah, and what Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is going to say that. Now, how do you get the shear of? How do I get the? It has to be mayim. If it's not mayim, if it's juice, then it's not possible to mikvah. It has to be 3 lugim of mayim. Now, what happens if this 3 lugim is a mixture? If it's 3 lugim is not pure water, it has other stuff in it. So that's going to be the machlokes if it has a shem mayim or if it has a shem yayin, and that's how we're going to compare it to our sugya. Now, there's 2 ways how to understand the Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is going to say everything has to do with color. If it's the color of mayim, it looks like a duck. It quacks like a duck, it's a duck. That's going to be Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. If just the color, I don't care about flavor, it's all about the color. That's how Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is going to go. Now, what does the Tanna Kama hold? So there's 2 versions of our Mishnah. I'm gonna say the version that we have Lefanenu, which is not the version that Rashi had, and Rashi changed the girsa to our version, and then I'll tell you afterwards what was the girsa in front of us. So like the first girsa, it says like this. No, you know what? Let's go the other way. Let's go first the girsa not Lefanenu, and then we'll talk about the girsa that's Lefanenu. The first girsa that's not Lefanenu, it didn't say Chasa Kortiv. So the Tanna Kama is discussing 2 separate things. Gimel logim mayim shenafal l'soichen kortiv yayin umarem k'mari yayin. So what do we have here? We have that 3 lug of water, a full share of mayim. So why? So what's wrong with it? Why should I say it doesn't have a din of mayim? Because marem k'mari yayin. Because wine has the ability to change the color of the water. So since it's marem kimari yayin, so therefore it's leipaslu. Yeah, v'nafal lemikvah leipaslu. Why? Because it's marem kimari yayin. That's the one reason. Or in like this version, gimel lugim mayim chasa kortiv. That it was less than a kortiv, less than 3. It was less than 3 lugim. So I don't have the share of 3 lugim. And in this case, is a milk, which is a very, very weak color, and that fell into the water. So it's marem kimarem mayim v'nafal. So in this reading, both the Reisha and the Seifa have 2 reasons why it didn't possible. Not in the first case, it has the color of wine, it has the shear of water, but it doesn't have the color of water. That's why it didn't possible. In the second case, it has the color of water, but it doesn't have the shear of water because it was a chasa kortiv. That's the mahalach that Rashi had in front of us. So like that reading. Yeah, like that reading, Lamaisa. Like that reading, um, color could somehow color could somehow have a could play a role sometimes, and that's why Rashi doesn't like that reading. So Rashi changes the gear so to our gears in front of us. That the ratio when it says about the Mareim Kimari Yayin, it's just an extra chiddush, right? We don't really care. It's irrelevant. Lamaisa, it's the Tanakama says it's all about the shear. Gimel Lugamayim Chosakortev. That's why. And Shnaf L'Sech Yayin. Why? Nothing to do Mareim K'Mari Yayin, Mareim K'Mari Mayim. We don't care. We don't care if it's Mareim K'Mari Mayim, if it's Mareim K'Mari Yayin. We don't care. It's all about the results. It's all about the shear. It's all about the color. That's that, right? So the first version that's not Lefanenu, the Tanakhama also cares somewhat about Mara, and that's why Rashi's not happy, because we want to tell to our Mishnah that it's completely about color. Okay, so Lavam Rabbi Yochanan Basa Chazus Azlina, and didn't Rabbi Yochanan, meaning Rabbi Yochanan Minori, doesn't he say that it goes Basa Chazus, Hachanami Zil Basa Chazus, V'taima, V'chazus, Dehai Mayininu. That the pshat is that since our Mishnah we're talking about Einechanami, normally it became paper. Why? Because the flavor went into this water immediately. And if the flavor went into the water immediately, it's already fruit juice. And if it's fruit juice, I should be able to what? It should have it in mayim. But since I should have it in Paris. Sai legabe, it shouldn't pass a little mikvah, or and sai legabe nikasav ma'isa. But since we go basa chazusa, and this is chazusa, mela, and mela doesn't work. That's what Rabbi Yochanan holds. That's the sugya, very gishmak. So the Gemara, and now we're going to take a U-turn, and we're going to go back to the original machlekes, where we're finished with the sugya of this retroactive wine, and now we're going to go back to the machlekes, the steer of our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is mashma, it's telling hichmitz lo hichmitz, and the Brisa was mashma that regardless of hichmitz lo hichmitz, machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. So the first teretz that we had was that no, even though the Brisa didn't tell us, but the Brisa was talking about b'shehechmitz. So the Gemara plead Rab Lezer, Rab Lezer hakam moedim, and from Rab Lezer's halacha, it's going to be clear that he holds that the machlekes is even koydim shehechmitz. Why? Because he's going to tell you what to do if you're mafresh. Be careful about if it's hechmitz. So obviously he's talking about that you're mafresh even as lo hechmitz. So he argues with the teretz. Upligid Rabbi Lezer, Dam Rabbi Lezer, Hakom moedim she'em mafrishin olav mimakam acher. Everyone's moide. Say Rabbi Yehuda, say the Chacham moide she'em mafrishin olav mimakam acher. You can't be mafresh. You can't be mafresh from one temed to another temed, mimakam acher, from a different temed, elim ken hechmitz. Only if it already ferments. But before that, if you're being mafresh before it ferments, obviously he holds that you have to be mafresh before fermentation. Elim ken hechmitz. Why? Because kasava beloy chimetz machlokes. The machlokes is even beloy chimetz. Vad kan loy mechayev Rabbi Yehuda elim mineu bei. Well, Rabbi Yehuda that holds that that it has a din of yayin, and therefore you have to be mafresh. He's right. He's the one that holds it has a din of yayin, but he still he holds mineu bei, meaning that the hafrashas meiser has to be mineu bei, meaning from one to, let me just get the cursor, mineu bei, el mineu bei, meaning from this barrel itself. You can't be mafresh from one barrel to the next to this barrel. Why? And this means like this: that if let's say I have two barrels, right? I have two barrels, and I don't know if they're both mechuyev. So the halacha is if they're both not mechuyev, I can't go be mafresh from one to the next. Why? Because Either way, it'll be a problem. Why? Because let's say what I have is chiyuv, and what he let's say I'm being mafresh from A to B, right? So and they're both sveikas, right? And so if A is potter and B is chayiv, right? And I'm being mafresh from A for B. So now, if A is potter, so it's not doesn't have a din of afrashas truma. So I wasn't mafresh anything on the thing that's chayiv, because since it's potter, it's not afrashas truma. And therefore, the Yisrael that's going to eat from B is going to be over Yosef Tvalim. And the reverse is also true. If you mafresh from A to B, and A is mechuyev and B is potter, so even though B was potter, so who cares? The Yisrael is going to eat from B. Who cares? It was potter in the first place. But maybe A is chayiv, and I took a chelik and I gave it to the kohen, and the kohen is going to be eating for something that was never hafresh. The only hafresh was the hafresh I did on B, and B was not a real hafresh because B was not mechuyev. So mela, you can't be mafresh from A to B and B to A. Yeah, it must be mafresh minei u. That's that Gemara. Let's move on. So the Gemara on hat temet. This is a new halach about temet. Ad sheloi hichmitz. Before it started to ferment. Mashikai b'mayim. What are we talking about here? We're talking about a very interesting process, which is hashaka. Hashaka is where mayim. Be'etzem, or all food stuff, all food and drink, you can't be toivel it. It has no tefillah, right? Or other bekalim has a tefillah, but food and drink, there's no eight. It doesn't have a tefillah. There's no tefillah process. There's no immersion process. However, mayim has a process called hashaka, which is that the pshat is if you put it back in the water. If you put it back in the water, it becomes part of the water, so then it becomes bottled to the water. Exactly what the lumdus of Hashaka is. This is mamish a big address for the lumdus of Hashaka, or Zriya, whatever it is. The water, if the water goes back to get to the water, so somehow it becomes part of the water, it's bottled to the water, and it loses its tumah. So what do we do? So what do you do by Hashaka? What you do is, you have, if somebody has, he has some sweet water, some good, nice filtered water, some nice Poland Springs, whatever, some geschmack of filtered water, and that became tamei. He wants to drink that, and he's sitting next to the ocean, and the ocean is salt water. He can't drink it. What are you going to do? Or he's sitting next to a place where there's no good water, right? So what do? So what you do is you do hashaka. What is hashaka? Hashaka is the notion of like kissing. You take the cup of water, you take it in, and you immerse the cup into the ocean until they touch. Once it touches, you push it in until the two waters touch. Once they touch, I got hashaka. Once I have hashaka, now it's kosher, and now I can go drink my Poland Springs. That's the Eitzah. That's hashaka. Sakti Gemara. But I can only do hashaka while it has a din of water. But once it becomes temet, once it becomes wine, once it is misha echmetz, now already has a flavor of wine, and misha echmetz already is the time of bottle, and therefore hashaka is not going to work. Yeah, misha echmetz emashika b'mayim. That's this. So Amar Rav Leishanu elishatamdu b'mayim toirim. This is only talking about when I started off with Mayim Toirim, and then after that eventually it became Tamei. Avol Tamei Mei Kara, but I started off with water that was Tamei, Loi. So Azal Rav Gvia Mi Bei Kasel Amr L'Shmaitza Kamed Rav Ashi, and he's very bothered. Maishna Tamei Mei Kara Deloi Damrin and Aidi Demai Yakiri Shichni Tatoi. He's contemplating. It must be that Rava holds that that the reason why, what could the svara be that it shouldn't work? It must be that since there is somewhat of a mixture here, right? There is water and there's fruit juice here. So the Maya Yakira, water is a little bit heavier than the fruit juice. Maya Yakiri Shichni Tatai, that stays on the bottom of the cup. And the Peri Coffee Milael, and the fruit juice is somewhat lighter and it floats to the top. And we're assuming that the pshat is the bottom of it is the water, the top is the fruit juice. He puts in the cup and he just wants it to touch the water, just a mamash mashu. So it only touches the fruit juice and it doesn't touch the water. And there's no asaka lamaya. So then nobody say, why should it make a difference? And then it should never work. Why should it make a difference if the water started off or the water didn't work? It must be that the pshat is that we don't assume that the water is heavier than the fruit juice, and they don't mix, they mix, and since they mix, so therefore hashaka works regardless, and that's how we pass it. Yeah, that's this Gemara. Now, there is a major Tosfos, and this is the source of a lot of Torah. I'm just going to mention it. The Pshat Tova of Tosfos. Yeah? Tosfos asked the kasha of the Yereim. The Yereim, the Reb Lezemi Mintz, he brings a raya from this sugya to major yisoid. There is a klal in Legabi Tuma, Legabi Mikvah, there's a klal that Maya loy chaitzi. That the Pshat is that liquids do not make a chatzitza, right? If somebody has something that's liquid on his body, he goes into the mikveh, it's no problem. Because it's not a chatzitza, right? It has to be something. A sticky process has to be something, right? That's a chatzitza. Water is not a chatzitza. Zokt the Yereim, I have a raya from Unzer Gemara not like that. Because the Gemara had a problem. The Gemara wanted to say, right? The Gemara eventually says mavalbali, right? No problem. The Gemara says that the fruit juice and the water mix. But if without mixing, the Gemara agreed that would be a problem. That since the water is on the bottom and on the top is the fruit juice, and the fruit juice is what's touching the tar water, so the hashaka will not work on the bottom water. Frek the Yirei and frek the Belezami Metz. What do you mean? What do you mean? Who cares? Who cares? The fruit juice is only liquid, and liquid is not chaitzi. That's the kasha. Yeah, this is the Welt kasha. This is the kasha. This is the thing. This is where the big bucks is, man. What's the chiluk? Maybe there's a chiluk in Tvila and Hashaka, all different Torah. There's a lot of lamdas. Tosfos, we're going to move on. It's getting late, but I'm just going to say what Tosfos says. Tosfos says, I push the teretz. Tosfos says, the nerd like kasha midi. Tosfos is not masking to the whole kasha. Why? Because Tosfos says, and I think Tosfos is saying a very, very balbatsha teretz. Tosfos says that chatzitza doesn't work under normal circumstances is the pshat because when you immerse into the water, it's going to wash away. It's going to somewhat wash away. Masha'enkein by Ashaka, that your mom is just giving it a little kiss for a second. Nothing's going to be mavabali, and avada chatzitza would work. It seems like what Tosfos was saying. So we agree, right? And that's why we agree that had it been true that the water is on the bottom and the fruit juice is on top, then the taco would bly b'chatzisa. So in other words, what Tosfos is saying that we're not learning up from here any Grois alumnus legabi chatzitza. It just happens to be that legabi hashaka, the liquid is not going to move anywhere because you're just giving a little bit of a move. You're just giving a little bit of a kiss. Yeah, good. That's the Tosfos. Let's move on. Let's get. It's getting late. So we have to finish the parak. Right? When we're talking about a young child, a young girl, so the halacha is that there's different chusim that a father has in his daughter. So if she's still young enough that he could still sell her off, he could marry her off without her consent. And knas. At that point, there's no aktana. There's no knas. The Tanavau Mishnah holds the knas is only once she's a naira, once she's an adult. But once she's older and she's yesh knas, ein mecher. It's already too late. He can't sell her. So this is what Remeya holds. The Remeya holds that that the knas only kicks in once she's a gedola. That there is knas that even that even a young child, when she's still, even before she became a naira, there's still a chiyuv knas. Tanya, ktana mibas yoim echad ad shetavi beis Cyrus. This is all remei yesh la mecher vein la knas. She has mecher. The father could sell her off. Vein la knas. There's no. I'm sorry, mecher. We're not talking about marrying her off. We're talking about selling her off as a amavriya, right? Yeah, as a amavriya. Yeah, Ktana mibas yom echad ad shetavi beis Cyrus yesh la mecher vein la knas. Mishetavi beis Cyrus. Once she's already once she becomes a gedela, ad Mishetavi beis Cyrus ad shetibogi yesh la knas vein la mecher. This is what Rebbe holds. That v'makom sheyesh mecher ain't knas. V'makom sheyesh knas ain't mecher. Shoyer Rebbe yoyme kol makom. This is the shoyer Rebbe yoyme kol makom sheyesh mecher ain't knas. V'makom sheyesh knas ain't mecher. And the Chachamim they argue that the knas goes the whole period. The knas goes aside from when she's from when she's three years old until Achadibaga, which is past Nairis. Yesh knas. So it's mashma knas in mecha loy. Af knas b'makom mecha. In other words, the Chacham are not discussing. They're not arguing about mecher. Obviously, there's going to be mecher, but the knas, they expanded the knas period to include even b'makom sheyesh mecher. So let's go weiter. Sagt the Mishnah, kol makom sheyesh miyan ein chalitza, kol makom sheyesh chalitza ein miyan. This is the halacha. The halacha is about miyun, which is a drabanan dika marriage. Yeah, in those days we didn't have any. There was no Beis Yaakov system, and all girls had to be either married or there's going to be a problem. We didn't know what to do with them, so they married them off. So what happens if she doesn't have a father alive to marry her off? So her mother or her brother would marry her off, but that is a marriage midrabanan, and she has the ability to be memain. She could just say, "I'm not interested," yafshi, and she could just walk out of this marriage. So that's miyan. But that's only when she's a ketana. When she's a gedela, she can't do it miyan anymore. Kamakim sheyesh miyan ein chalitza, because since she's not a gedela anymore. Since she's not a gedela, so therefore. She can't. You can't do chalitza. She has to be a gedela when she does chalitza. If she's already a gedela enough that you could do chalitza, ein mion. It's already too late. She can't be memayin. She's already a gedela and she already consented to this rabbanan diga marriage. Yeah, that's the Mishnah. The Chacham disagree, and they hold yesh miyun b'makom chalitza. They say that even when she's somewhat of a gedola, there's still yesh miyun. She can still walk out of a marriage even when she's a gedola. The Tanya Moshe Abbas Mamenes Achatavi Beis Cyrus Divrei Meir. That's the Tana of our Mishnah. Rabbi Yudaima Achiyir b'hashacha al lavan is when there's somewhat more hair than just the regular Shtei Cyrus. She's somewhat older than that. So there is an overlap where there's Sai Chalitza and Sai Miyun. So I just want to say, interesting that it's Allah Lovan. I don't know why they assume that all Jews are whites. I don't know. I'm not sure where we got that assumption. But anyway, but there is a very, very important toisus that's asked. There's a toisus in Yevamis that seems to contemplate that Rabbi Yehuda holds that she's not a gedola until Achiyir B'Hashacha Ala Lavan. And the Achronim ask a kasha on Tosus from this Gemara. Because our Gemara is meforish that even though, right, the Gemara is already that it is a makom chalitza. So obviously she is a g'dayla. So she's a g'dayla because you can do chalitza, right? And ava became yesh miyon. So the pshat and review is obviously that even though she's a g'dayla, Chacham said that you can still have miyon. But it can't be that the Chacham that Rabbi Yehuda is arguing on the shear of when she becomes a g'dayla. Because if she's not a g'dayla, how could you have chalitza? Yeah, that's the kasha. We're going to leave it there. We're going to leave it that kasha. We're going to just move on because we have to finish the Gemara. So the Gemara weiter. Kol makom sheyesh tekiya ein avdola. V'chol makom sheyesh avdola ein tekiya. So now like this, the Mishnah is talking about Bisman Mikdash. It happens to be that La Halacha is brought down in Shulchan Aruch that you should try to do this like they have in Chateau. They have an announcement on top of the shul. But this is this ikatakana of what it was when the Beis Hamikdash was kaim. That there was a tekiah. There was a tekiah going into Shabbos. And there was with the 6 tekiyahs to make sure that the people knew to close up the shops to come from. The first one was that they would come in from the fields, and the next one they'd close the shops, etc. The whole say that wrong. So kol makom sheish tekiyah ain't havdalah. There's no makom to have havdalah. For kol makom sheish havdalah, that means after Shabbos ain't tekiyah. There's no reason to have a tekiyah fakir. Havdalah is for after Shabbos. Yeah. Now what happens? Yontif shechali yos b'erev Shabbos. What happens when you have a yontif? We're gonna be talking about both cases. A yontif that comes on Erev Shabbos and a yontif that comes after Shabbos. So yontif shechali yos b'erev Shabbos. So what do? Toikin, you make a tekiah for loy mavdilan. Because why? Because kol makom sheish tekiah and havdalah. So from Yontif to Shabbos, all we want is people to stop doing the work of Eichel Nefesh, cooking, which you were able to do on Yontif, and there's no reason to do havdalah. Fakir, we're going into aggressive kedusha. But Matzah Shabbos, but if let's say Yontif falls out on Matzah Shabbos, so now the pshat is, so we don't need anybody to stop anything. Fakir, we're doing havdalah. So mavdilim v'loy take it. I'll just tell you that the Rambam does say, the Rambam says that they did blow shofar on a Matzah Shabbos. They did do a blow shofar on Matzah Shabbos. So therefore, so the Achronim explained pshat in the Rambam that the Rambam understands that the beginning of kol makom sheish tekiyah and havdalah, kol makom sheish havdalah ain't tekiyah, is only talking about Yom Tov and Shabbos. But obviously, on a regular week, there will be a tekiyah and a havdalah. On a regular Matzah Shabbos, there was a tekiyah and a havdalah. It's only when we're talking about a yontif, when we're talking about yontif and Shabbos that are coming back to back, that's where we have to choose one or the other. But in a case where on a regular weekday, there will be you would have both. Okay, and when Shabbos comes, when Yontif comes before Shabbos, so the Achronim explained that even though it is an issa to blow shofar on Yontif, but it's a asi asei d'Rabbanon v'doicha lois asei d'Rabbanon. You have a asei d'Rabbanon over here of this chiyuv tekiyah because we're going into Shabbos, and we have a lois asei d'Rabbanon of shmias kol. So we have a asei d'Rabbanon that asi asei d'Rabbanon v'dachi lois asei d'Rabbanon. So tomorrow right, keitzam avdilin hamavdil mikodesh l'chol. So what do you do when you're doing havdalah? When you're going from Yontif to when you're going from Shabbos to Yontif? So you go hamavdil bei kodesh lekodesh. You you have to say havdalah because I'm going down on a kedusha, but you don't want to. I guess you don't want to offend Yom Tov that much. So you say ben kodesh lekodesh. So I'm ben kodesh chama lekodesh hakal. You say from kodesh chama to a weekend kodesh. Okay. That is the Mishnah. Hey chitakeah. Now the Gemara assumed, and I guess the reason is because the whole concept of a tekiah, these tekiyahs, is for announcements, and we don't want to mix people up. We want people to we don't want them to have less information. We want them to have more information. So it was understood that this unusual tekiah that you're being tekiah on Yontif, that's going into Shabbos, is going to be slightly different. So the question is, how do we do that tekiah? What did that tekiah look like? Hey chitakeah, Rabbi Yehuda tekiah umeiria mitecha tekiah. You're doing normally a tekiah through a tekiah. Over here, you do a tekiah umeiria mitecha tekiah. Yeah, you somewhat the truah comes. The way Rashi says, you don't stop. That's what Rashi says. You don't stop. You go from the tekiah and you don't stop. You do without a stop. The Meiri seems to say that the pshat is that the tekiah is even a shorter tekiah. You do it half a tekiah and then you go to truah. So that would be more of an indication like we're not coming from chol. Okay. Rav Asi Amar tekiah umeiria b'neshima achas. You tekiah and then you do a truah and you just don't make. You don't breathe in between. You stop, but you don't breathe. Now, on this Gemara is a massive machlokes, And it's brought down in halacha, and every one of us, if you're paying attention, this goes on in shul every Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because there's a famous machloikis. Yeah, there's a famous machloikis if the tkiya and trua are supposed to be b'neshima achas or b'shtein. I'm sorry, if the shvarim trua should be b'neshima achas or they should be b'shtein neshimas. Right? That's a machloikis. So what do? So we paskin, we go like the Beis Yosef that says that you should do that you do the. We do. I'm not sure which one's which. We do one of them b'neshima achas. I think we do shtei neshima. I think we do b'neshima achas by the tkiyas hamiyoshev, and the shtei neshimas by the tkiyas the mu'omid. Right? That's how the Ramah says we shouldn't do it, but that's how we paskin. Right? That we split it up. So now, if you're doing neshima achas, what is the definition of neshima achas? Zok the Beis Yosef. I have a raya from this Gemara that a neshima achas means neshima achas means that it's all, I don't breathe in again, but I have to be mafsik. What's the raya? Zok the Beis Yosef, look at Rashi. Rashi says, b'neshima achas, like Rashi. Zok Rashi, umikol mokai mafsiku b'netayim. It's my first in Rashi that even Yeshiva Achas must have a hefsek. Zok the Beis Yosef from the Chuvas Hadeshen and as they pass in the Beis Yosef that avad the Yeshiva Achas needs a hefsek in between. Kup the Chazon Ish and the Chazon Ish Tainis. What's Rashi saying over here? Why did Rashi say doing a hefsek? Because Pasha the signal in Gemara over here. The first Mandama said what? That there's no hefsek on them Zokravasi that the pshat is that I don't have to. They don't have to have him back to back. I could even stop. But what? But it should just be b'neshima achas. But not that's the definition of b'neshima achas. That's what as I tell you the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish holds takei nechanami. You don't need a hefsek. He's Chumas Hadeshen, Beis Yosef on one side, the Chazon Ish on the other side. Yeah. So I just want to be miyashiv. So what's the pshat in the Beis Yosef? Where's the Beis Yosef coming from? It's the Signal Gemara. It's Pasha. Ravasi's coming in. The teretz is that Rashi is really learning ke'en the Meiri, but just slightly different. The Meiri learns, and I'll just say it this way, it's just to be misada very clear. The Meiri learns that tekeah Maria Matechat Tekiah means that the tekiah is shorter. A shorter tekiah, and then you do the tekiah a trua right away, right? Ravasi's tekiah Maria Misheba Achas, meaning that you do a full tekiah. Misheba Achas, but you do a full tekiah. Rashi's learning. So in other words, late Rabbi Yehuda, I'm somewhat abbreviated tekiah, and Rabbi Yehuda and Ravasi's saying, no, it's not an abbreviated tekiah. Rashi's learning just like that. But the abbreviation is not in the length of the tekiah, but the abbreviation is the end. Rashi seems to be learning that the machlokes of Yehuda and Ravasi is, do I need the end of the tekiah for it to be called a tekiah? Ravasi says, since I'm tekiah, that I could be tekiah, amriya metechat tekiah, and even though they're attached, it's no problem, because I don't need the end of the tekiah, I just need the length of the tekiah. Ravasi says, tekiah, amriya menishima achas, that I need the end of the tekiah for it to be a tekiah. That's how the Beis Yosef is learning Pshat and Rashi. Because otherwise it's not a tekiah if you don't stop. It's like the Beis Yosef, it's like the Chumas Hadeshen. So it was like every single one of us. By a true tekiah also, you need by a shvarim true also. If you don't have the end, if you don't have it, avali you'll do b'neshima achas. But if you don't have the mafsik beinehem, it won't be a shvarim. Yeah, you hear what I'm telling you? Very geschmack. Yeah. Zok the Gemara asking Ravasi. So Ravasi said, "Menashima achas." Asking Ravasi, "Behutzel kishmeitze." Like he did that. What that it's Menashima achas become makamafsik benem. Makes veifrek the Gemara brayso. We have a brayso that says Yom Tu Shechal Yisberu Shabbos. So I have to make a tekiah, but it says Toikiv Leimerian. My love, loy merian clouds. Mashma, not like Rav Yehuda, not like Ravasi. So we cut out the trua totally, and that's how we make a difference. So tomorrow, loy Rav Yehuda mitaris l'tamei, and Ravasi mitaris l'tamei. Rav Yehuda mitaris l'tamei loy merian fnei atzmo elam mitoich atkiya, elam mitoich tkiya. In other words, when the Brisa says v'loy merian, it just means that it's somewhat different. And each one says it the way their own does. You don't do by itself. Yeah? Good. The Mishnah said that b'motzei Shabbos you say ben kodesh lekodesh. So when do you say ben kodesh to kodesh? So Rabbi says just b'chasim you say ben kodesh to kodesh. Even in the ikar bracha you say hamavdu ben kodesh to kodesh. V'les hilchos hakavase. And Rashi explains why. Why v'les hilchos hakavase? Because the signon of Havdalah is that we first make a whole bunch of Havdalahs that are all midairais, that are all in first in the pasuk, and then afterwards, at the end, we just fearais. At the end, we talk about what the Havdalah that we're doing. But beforehand, in the beginning, in the ikar, what's called it of the in the ikar frame, in the ikar meat of the Havdalah, we're just talking about the Havdalah that are midairais. So why should you mention the ben kodesh lekodesh? Rav Doisa Omar ben Kodesh Chomer the Kodesh Hakal. And Rashi says the reason is because the loy mizal zalina b'yantiv kulihai. Yeah, loy mizal b'yantiv the Kodesh Hakal. Right. Now I just what does Rav Doisa hold? I saying what's the word? What's the machlekes here? This says ben kodesh chomer the kodesh hakal. What does Rabbi hold? So we hold no, you can't do that. You can't be mizalzel and yomtiv so much and call it kodesh hakal. Okay, what did Rabbi hold? He knew that he's saying ben kodesh hakal. The teretz is that he felt that it's a zilzul in Shabbos to say ben kodesh to kodesh. Yeah. To compare Shabbos to Yom Tov is that's also a zozol, right? Shabbos should be on a higher plane, and therefore he held that you have to differentiate between the kedusha of Shabbos and Yom Tov. I'm just saying misvara like that. Happens to be that we hold that no, you can't be mizalzel on Yom Tov, so you say ben kodesh to kodesh. So I just want to say there's a big machlokes achronim. What happens if somebody stood up on a regular day, or he thought that he lost the cheshbon, and he said ben kodesh to kodesh? Are you yotzo or not? If you were supposed to say ben kodesh l'chol, you said ben kodesh l'kodesh. So it's a machlokes of Rabbi Yashiv and the Shmuel Vosner. Rabbi Yashiv says that it's fine, and Shmuel Vosner says it's a problem of Mishanim Matbeh Chacham, and you're not Yotze. So I wasn't able to be ma'ayin in the Sugyas Klar, but I just would say that l'chura, I would say misvar just from this Gemara, I would say that that you're not Yotze. Because ad kan loy pligi Rabbana with Reb Doisa, because loy mizalzelina b'yontif kuli high. But be'etzem Reb Doisa's taina that you can't compare Shabbos to Yontif is a good taina, and that's why Reb Doisa's and the reasoning for Reb Doisa to say ben kodesh hacham and kodesh hakal is extant. It's just we can't be mizalzel b'yontif to call it kodesh hakal. But when it comes to Shabbos and Shabbos and the weekday, you're going to go say ben kodesh to kodesh. You didn't do the whole thing. Over there we're also asking that you can't be mizalzel on Shabbos and call ben kodesh to kodesh. That's what I would have said. Okay. So the Marvaita, Reb Zera. Yontif shechalis be'emtza Shabbos. If Yontif comes in middle of the week, Shabbos over here doesn't mean on Shabbos. Yontif can't, right? It doesn't come in the middle of Shabbos. It means it comes in the middle of the week. Oimer hamad be'kodesh l'chol. No problem. You say hamad be'kodesh l'chol ben the choshech ben yisrael ha'amim u'bein ben hashvi l'shesh yemei ha'masa. So why are you mentioning B'yom Yeshil Shesh Yemei HaMasa? Who cares about B'yom Yeshil Shesh Yemei HaMasa? My timer say that Havdalas Umoyne. So Rashi explains like this. The halacha of Havdalas is that you have to mention a minimum of 3 and up to 7 havdalos that are mufurish in the Torah, which we mentioned. What are the 3 that we say? It doesn't say hamavdol ben yom hashilish yemasa. There's no such a pasuk. There's three. We say hamavdol ben kodesh l'chol ben yisol amim ben yom hashilish. I'm sorry, hamavdol ben kodesh l'chol and ben ol l'choshech ben yisol amim. Those are the 3 that it says in the pasuk. Then we go back and we have to connect the Ben Kodesh L'chol to Havdalah. How do we do that? Ben Yom HaShil L'Sheish Masa. So Ben Yom HaShil L'Sheish Masa is like an is a link from the Ben Kodesh L'chol to the Hamad Ben Kodesh L'Kodesh, and therefore that's why you say Ben Yom HaShil L'Sheish Masa, even though you're talking on a random Tuesday. Just one last thing interesting to know. The Rebbeinu Tam is an interesting tidbit. Rebbeinu Tam was asked where this lashon comes from. That apparently it was a minig that already came in from the in the times of the Rishonim, in times of Rebbeinu Tam, wasn't known where. His Talmidim asked him where it comes. We have some extra nuschos in Yom Tov. We say ben kedushas Yom Tov, kedushas Shabbos, Hivdalta, V'Kedashta, Zamcha Yisrael, V'Kedusha Sechel. Where does that language come from? And Rebbeinu Tam says that the reason is because the Gemara Pesachim says that you should mention in between 3 and 7 Havdalas, and we only do 3 every single week. He says that nusach is a kiyum that once in a while we do those 7. That's that arichas haloshin that we put in the kedusha that is to have a kiyum in those 7, and the Rishonim talk about how that is a kiyum in the 7 havdalas. Hadron Allah Hakol Shoichin, Hadron Allah Hakol Shoichin, Hadron Allah Hakol Shoichin. Bez Hashem will start the second parak. Bez Hashem tomorrow.